In the interest of time, let's introduce the guest. Our guest speaker today is none other than my friend Irene Karuga. I've known Irene now, I don't know for how long, and she continues to amaze me. Irene has a rich background of over 19 years professional experience in financial services, including startup experiences, while still in the bank, two bank subsidiaries. And she transitioned to C-suite role for entrepreneurship by founding Lemik Leasing Limited. Currently, the founder and managing director for Lemik Leasing Limited. She's the director for Leasing Association of Kenya. Yes, she co-authored How We Rise, a book on women navigating challenges. I think that's a good one. And embracing resilience and agility and redefining leadership success. You can relate with what we are going to discuss today. So Irene is passionate about collaborations and believes that successful economies will be built through supporting MSMEs grow and scale to make them successful and sustainable. She is using equipment leasing as a route for financial inclusion and aims to disrupt SME access to finance. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have Irene with us to share with us her nuggets, how she's been navigating the ropes from the corporate to becoming an entrepreneur, building a legacy, and she's got very beautiful stories. And we know that stories inspire, stories make a difference. Even as Live Your Dream, we believe in equipping and inspiring people that they may be able to live their dreams. So welcome, Irene, and take it up.
Thank you so much, PP. Privilege joining you this morning in sharing a bit of my story in terms of where I got here. This is the second time I've done a presentation, and I believe by sharing my nuggets, I'll be an encouragement to someone. One thing I want to say is more often than not, we wait to be very successful for us to be able to share our stories. But I told myself that I'll always share the steps that made me who I am, so that when I get to what I will call my success, and you'll be surprised what success means to me, then it will never come as a surprise to anybody because there were intentional building blocks. So without much further ado, I'll go straight into my presentation. I'll put off my video so that the connection is smooth. Maybe you can confirm if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it. You may make it to presentation mode if that's okay with you. Right now it's still just the slide mode. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, I know at the end of it, when we are interacting, you will turn on your camera so that people are able to see your face. Your beautiful face. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, PP. If I was an object, I'll probably be a rolling ball. If anybody knows me very well, you'll know that I'm always on the move, looking out for the next biggest challenge. It seems from the time I was born, the motion started, and I will always be a work in progress until I fulfill my purpose. For me, my purpose is really my design, my reason for being, and it's bigger than the sum of all my fears. So here's my story. My name is Irene Karuga, the founder and CEO of Lemik Leasing. Lemik Leasing is a company in financial inclusion. Today, I say it is really a bridge between an SME who wants to acquire productive equipment for the operations and the supplier who has it. But this SME is not able to acquire that particular asset because of limitations in finance, or they're being asked for security. And the supplier at the end of the day is not able to offer this equipment to the suppliers. But you may wonder, why did I decide to pursue this particular job? So what is my motivation? I'll start with my why. 19 years ago, I left campus. And when I stepped into my first job, the first thing I knew is I wanted to transition into an entrepreneur. Why did I have that clarity so clearly? This was really influenced by a personal experience. My mom used to work for Kenya Railways. Then it was not the current one that we know of. because it was really a prestigious organization where the trains will go to Mombasa at night, cutting through the Savo. When she retired, because at that point the retirement was at 50 years, I saw how she had worked so hard, sometimes coming home late many a times, but I didn't feel that her retirement was commensurate to the years that she had worked. So what that did is I was very clear, I will never work for anybody until retirement. So that's really where the seed of entrepreneurship was laid. The second thing, I knew that I wanted to transition into entrepreneur during a period when I had enough energy, so that then I don't wait until I'm old and retired and I probably don't have enough resources to keep going. So that's really what I had. At that particular point, I didn't know exactly what business I wanted to do, but all I knew is I wanted to build a solid business when I was 45 years old. So I wrote my vision 21 years earlier, actually 21 years earlier. So what path did I take? So the first thing I told myself, for me to become an entrepreneur, the one thing I aimed for is a CEO. In my young mind, at that particular point, I thought, okay, a CEO is a person who leads an organization. He or she is the person who makes decisions on everything. They know everything that happened. So I gave myself another target. By the time I reached 40, I wanted to make it to CEO. So what that did is this. Number one, I started with my end in mind. And the reason why the end in mind was very clear is because sometimes when you don't know where you go, you want to go, any road will take you there. But when you are very clear where you want to go, what is very clear is no matter how many obstacles you go through, you will actually get to where you're going. Like this morning, there's some rain. If your internet connection was faulty, either because you had a power outage, you have the chance to hotspot, you have a chance to go to a restaurant and go and get free Wi-Fi. And that's what really that goal meant. Because I had a goal in mind, I worked towards it. So in terms of my career strategy, I started my job in UAP Insurance as a graduate and as a graduate clerk. That was really the first job, immediately straight from campus. But because I had a goal in mind, number one, I knew numbers don't lie. So every time I actually sought a role that I could be measured by numbers. Because I believe that if I'm able to work and someone is able to measure the amount of numbers I knew, then it meant that I will be able to demonstrate my performance without subjectivity, and it will be easy for me to earn promotions. So that's the first strategy that I adopted. So when I joined in, I was in a department called underwriting. In underwriting, you will key in data about what we call the insurance policy, so that then you develop what you call a policy document. But I quickly got tired of that role because I found it very repetitive. There was no place where I could exercise my judgment. And number two, there was no place where I could be measured with numbers. So I quickly asked for a customer service role, which had a sales target. Remember, my background was actually I had studied marketing and also had done a professional diploma along the way. So I knew I could sell. So because of that, I didn't have a problem being measured with financial, with numbers, quantifiable goals, because I knew it was very easy. And it sure worked, because in no time, I actually got 2 promotions in UAP. During that period, I'd stayed 3.5 years, and I was able to grow from underwriting. I moved from customer service. From customer service, I was moved to relationship management. The other thing that I was very clear about, I needed to do a role that required an element of judgment in my decision making. So for instance, when I was going to approach the agents and brokers when selling, it wasn't just about me telling them certain things about insurance, how insurance was being underwritten. It was basically, it allowed me to actually exercise some element of judgment in terms of how then do I convince them to be able to sell to the organization. So I was very clear. I needed to be able to use my judgment, because the more I used my judgment, then the easier it became for me to apply myself anywhere. The other thing I noticed about people who are CEOs, they managed people and they had very good interpersonal skills. So one of the things I pride myself, and one of the encouragements I will give us, anytime you have an opportunity for training in your organization, please take it up. Every time there was a training opportunity, I always give myself. I remember like communication, I learned communication one-on-one. Anyone who's interacted with me to date will see I have a style of writing my emails because that's the foundation that was laid for me. In terms of people management, I left UAP and I joined NIC Bank. And because of being consistent in terms of my performance, I was actually headhunted 3.5 years into my first level. And because of that, I realized one of the skills that I didn't have, I became very intentional in saying, what skills do I need to have then to move to the next level? So the only skill I hadn't picked up when I left UAP was people management. So when I joined NIC Bank then, today it's known as NCBA, for those who do not know, I knew I needed to learn how to lead people because team management was also important. So when I joined, I was also hired on a sales role for selling insurance premium financing. Basically, it's the loans that people use when they're paying for the insurance. So the sales role and the operations role was separated. Within my first year of joining the organization and because of performance, I demonstrated I could be able to work well with a team, and I was promoted to manage both the sales and the operations team. Remember, those are skills I'm ticking as I move along because these are the building blocks that I'm building. The second thing that I did, I became curious about the organization. I joined the bank. I realized the bank was very competitive. Everything was about performance. So that aligned very well with me because I liked being measured in numbers. But I was curious about how people grow. So I started looking at what is relationship management. I looked at the operations role in the bank. But what shocked me is I could find people who probably are in what I would call senior management, but not necessarily heads of department, and they had worked in the bank for over 20 years. So for me, I knew that's really not the path that will take me to my ultimate goal. So one of the things that happened, the bank was offering the current solution that ended up being my passion. So the bank used to finance what we call independent leasing companies. And all these leasing companies will come to the bank and they say, we have all these projects worth billions of shillings. And they will tell the banks, we want to give these assets to those particular clients. At that time, it was so amazing. Here I was consistently meeting my target, but here was an opportunity for me to enter into a role that one project I can do like 1 billion shillings worth of deals. And that was really exciting for me. Remember, I love challenges. So based on that, there was an opportunity for a business development manager to actually take on that role within the bank. So that also earned me a promotion. So this was now the third promotion that I got within the organization. And when I took this role, what was clear is everybody discouraged me because I was in a role that I was consistently meeting my targets. I used to earn very good bonuses. So everybody wondered, why would I want to start from scratch? But remember, I knew I had an end game, which was turn CEO by 40. So when I looked at this role, very few people were interested in it. There was a legal aspect, there was a financial aspect, there was a tax aspect. So of course, there were so many new skills I needed to learn within a short period, but the bank does not care. You must meet your objective. So for me, that's the first biggest challenge that I took. And I'm glad I took it because eventually that target is what led me to set up Lemik, because today, at that point, I didn't know my company was going to be about leasing, but 12 years down the line, I'm actually at home in doing leasing. So I joined the particular role, and that is where really I will say was the biggest challenge. The third thing that I picked up is every time I took a role, I gave it a 3-year career goal plan. Once you reach middle management, I'm sure most of us know, if in 3 years you haven't been promoted, there's a likelihood when people are being removed, you're likely to be removed. So I was very categorical. Every 3 years, I must move to the next level, acquire a new skill that makes me easier for me to go. One thing I want to note about making that career strategy and taking a challenging role, it gave me an opportunity to be part of a team that set up the first leasing company in Kenya. Immediately we launched. 24 hours later, I was live on Breakfast Show, the first time I was ever presented to the media really about what I did. But because I was so eager to make a difference, I was never afraid. The only thing I did is I kept on stacking up skills along the way. The other thing that I came to realize is the importance of building networks. So when I was during that whole path, I'm taking us a bit back. Through all that path, I realized all the customers we were dealing with are business people. So as I was selling to them the solution that we were doing, I became very intentional in being sincere with them. If the organization was not going to support them in what they wanted, then I was very clear to be honest with them and say, we are not able to support you because of 1, 2, 3 reasons. Because of that, the one thing that really helped in terms of my career path, I started building trust and confidence with clients. Today, Power Monday and also Live Your Dream creates avenues for us to build networks. So my question to you is, what kind of networks are you building? Today, you may be working in a big organization, you have a lot of opportunities, but are you being intentional in the interactions that you have? Because those networks proved to be the route in which it made it easy for me to be able to take a leap. Notwithstanding having worked for a big brand, I took a major leap. After about 6.5 years in an IC bank, I took another leap. At that point, I felt that though we had set up a subsidiary, remember my end game was to become a CEO. The bank did not allow me to run the company fully, so they still restricted what I could and could not do. So I still felt that it never allowed me the liberty to be able to develop all the skills that I needed to do to have in order to jump into the CEO suit. So 6.5 years later, I moved from NIC to the then Jamii Bank. For us who don't, who may not know, during that time I made the jump. I made the jump when we had some bank collapses. At that point, Imperial Bank collapsed. A few months later, Chase Bank collapsed. All my friends thought I was crazy. How could I move to a much smaller bank when banks are having a run? And I remember someone even wondered, how could I leave NIC to go to what they called then as a microfinance? Today, I can confidently say that was the best decision I made, because when I made that jump to move to a smaller organization, I was given the liberty to set up another company. Second opportunity for startup experience. In this case, I was literally given a certificate of incorporation, and I was told my probation is to have the company up and running. But remember, because I kept on building experiences and along the path, it was not difficult for me to set it up. I worked as the sole employee in that organization until I could pay my salary, because I understood if I couldn't pay my salary, I'll end up being a liability to the organization. But this became more intentional because I knew what it took to run a business. I was given the liberty to build from scratch, but I also knew I had a much higher responsibility to make it work. Fast forward 2.5 years down the line, the company was profitable. We were in the path to scale. Unfortunately, I was not able to continue my path there, despite the fact that it was a very wonderful organization that gave me so much experience because of the liquidity position that the bank faced at that particular time. Today, the company and the one I set up in NIC, they are both still there, but all of them, as you know, they're being called differently. So before I moved to the business that I ended up setting up, at that point when I made the move, 2 years, 7 months down the line, I was headhunted I was headhunted again. And this particular time I was headhunted for an organization that was owned by an investment company in Kenya. But at that point, they wanted a head of business development. But when they wanted the head of business development, one thing was very clear. I told them I ran the organization that I am in as a CEO, so I was not willing to take anything less. They were willing to offer me a big salary. But remember, if you look at my path, I have not mentioned anywhere where money was a motivator. And the reason why money was not a motivator, I have generally never been materialistic. And for me, money is really a resource or a tool to enable me navigate one or two things. And that is why money was never a motivator in my career growth. So when I left that particular interview, I was clear, I was sure that they will never call me back. 2 weeks down the line, they called me and they opted to offer me the CEO position. They felt that I had proven myself. So at 37 years old, I actually made it into a CEO position. So that's really how I met my first goal. And because of that, and looking at my path, today, if you looked at my LinkedIn, I literally grew from an officer to a senior officer, from a senior officer to a middle-level manager, from a middle-level manager to a head of a business, and eventually to a CEO. And from a CEO, then I jumped into running my own company as a director. Why was that path very important for me? It was important for me because each and every step of my growth, I picked up specific skills that I wanted to acquire. I was able to learn and navigate challenges between one role to the other. And that is why today I am confident in the business that I set up today. But what is more interesting, I can move on then to my what. So how did that then influence the kind of business that I set up? So when I became a CEO leading a business, of course, I had my vision. But at that point, remember, I still was working with a goal in mind. I gave myself 5 years. I joined a C-suite level at 37, which was 3 years ahead of my curve. I gave myself 5 years to build a solid business. The organization I worked for was known for giving hefty bonuses. So this is the mindset I walked in there. In those 5 years, I'll work very hard. I'm used to meeting my objectives. I'll live there with my savings to be able to help me set up a business. Things didn't end up how I had planned, but I'll tell you how I navigated it. And what determined my what? Going back a bit, when I was in Jamibora, we were supporting what I would call the SME businesses. And each of the entrepreneurs I used to speak to, one thing stood out for me. Number one, each of those entrepreneurs had a dream. They had a dream of what they wanted their business to achieve for them. It was either to support them to meet their financial objectives. It was there to support their families. So that's there was something, a burning desire in my life. And I asked myself, if I had the opportunity to make a difference to these enterprises, what will I do next? So I started not questioning my what. Money was not a motivator. So for me to be able to know exactly what I needed to do, I went through a coaching session. I got a professional coach who was able to clearly outline what my values are. And then I did a self-reflection and I looked back at my career, what gave me more satisfaction? Is it when I made the money or when I made a difference to someone's life? And what was very clear, it's when I made a difference to someone's life. And during that time, one of the things I did, I prayed to God and I told God, show me the path in which you want me to go. I actually took a sojourn to a place called Champagne Ridge. It's a very, very beautiful place. If you go to my LinkedIn, you'll see me talking about that particular story. And that is why I knew my why. If I was going to set up a business, it will be a business that will utilize my financial skills, which I had acquired over the years. Remember, my background was not finance, but I'll be intentional in helping businesses with the skill set that I derived. And that is what Lemik is all about. So that influenced the business that I do today. I wanted a business where my measure of success is not how much money I make, but how many businesses I enabled to turn the lights on. And I wanted to make the most impact. When I look back, it was the times when I helped someone either grow in a role where I was able to give a positive word. That's what gave me more gratification. But of course, I had to count the cost. What did I require? What financial resources did I need? What networks did I require? And what skills did I require? So that is how I ended up with my what. So, cut a long story short, and I know I'm coming to the end of my presentation, I actually made the leap in October 2022. That was 4 years, 4 months into my role as the CEO, I made the jump. When I made the jump in October, I signed my first big contract actually in the month of November. So I will say what really made me not scared. The first thing I had clarity on my why. My why was very clear. Money was not a motivator. And that is why when I talked about today's presentation, I mentioned when I left, I got 3 offers for CEO roles, one including a regional role in Africa. The reason why I turned them down is because money was not my motivator. And secondly, when I looked at the offer that they were going to give me as a CEO, I quickly did my math and I knew, God willing, in another 5 years' time, my company will be able to pay me more than that. So the only thing I told myself, I needed to be patient because right now I felt I had reached my ultimate goal in terms of my career growth. So money was no longer going to motivate me. So I had my clarity on my why. So anytime you think of transitioning, ask yourself, what is making you jump? Is it survival because you want to make revenue? Do you want to make a difference? Because the clarity on the why will influence whether you're able to turn back on the reason why you want to become an entrepreneur. The second thing, I did a self-assessment. A self-assessment meant that I was very clear on what values drove me. Remember, I mentioned I used to be sincere with clients. My integrity was very clear. I'd rather tell you no than tell you what you want to hear. I always aimed for excellence. And because of that, when I started my business, I knew people don't know Lemik. So the first thing I did, my face was actually the photo that you will see in my website when we initially started out. 2 years down the line, because we are currently we've just started our 3rd year in Lemik. 2 years down the line, I have removed my face from the company. When I put my face there, this was me putting myself out there and saying, I am running my own business. And that became a very easy discussion because I had built trust with the people that I used to deal with. And when I got my first big contract, which was a 6-figure contract, the first person who helped me was a network I had built over the years. I was very clear my brand had no similarity to the organization I worked for. It comes down to integrity. Sometimes I know when we are making the jump, we want to take our employers' clients, we want to make our brands very close to our employers. Mine was extreme opposite. Why? Because I had confidence in my personal brand, and that is what I sold when I set up. The second thing was financial assessment. One of the biggest fears you'll have when it comes to transitioning is that regular income you receive on the 24th or the 27th of the month, depending on what organization you work in. There's one app I use, and I will encourage us to look for it if you can. It's called I Save Money. It's on Google Play Store. This particular app, what it did for me, I didn't just put my budget and I say I want to spend 50,000 shillings in a month. I literally broke that 50,000 shillings to the last coin. 1,000 shillings is for hair, 2,000 for shoes, like that. And what it did, and I did that for 2 years in a row, what it did, I was able to know what is the basic minimum of cash that I needed to survive on. And that's what really gave me the encouragement to know that I don't need a big income for me to be able to jump. And for as long as I can run a business that can help me meet this bare minimum, the rest I'll figure it out along the way. So that's the one thing that gave me confidence. So when you talk about budgeting and personal financial management, that is the one thing that will always give you confidence in making the jump, because you'll realize more often than not, over 40% of what you spend on is discretionary spending that you may choose not to spend it. The second thing, I also developed a strong support system. I'm part of an investment group. I spoke to my family and I told them my decision, and I told them for this period I might be broke, and that was the reality, but at least I prepared them for that conversation. Then, as you note, I was very clear in my preparation and planning, stacking skills along the way, because one of the things that I learned, when you run a business, you're responsible for everything. If you hire employees, you're responsible for them. So sometimes we want to jump into entrepreneurship, but we don't develop certain skills. We are good at others. But that preparation and planning becomes very easy because it helps you then know, how do I manage the entire organization, to know even how money is made, how is money spent, and how does that influence my pricing. The other thing I always say, I'm always a continuous learner. I'm a lifelong learner. When I chose to transition, I didn't take it for granted that I had worked in corporate. I joined what I call accelerator programs that enabled me to also continue sharpening my knowledge and even the skills that I felt that I needed to have as an entrepreneur. So I quickly jumped into investment readiness programs about women in business, just to know how the entrepreneurship landscape is. Then the other thing, which is very important, I learned to celebrate my small wins. Small wins means if I meet this particular threshold, I celebrate. If you follow my LinkedIn page, you'll notice I celebrate a lot of the wins. When I clocked our second year, I celebrated. When I clocked our first year, I celebrated. Because sometimes what happens is when we don't celebrate those so many wins, when we get setbacks is when we give up. Then the last thing is, for me, the power of faith was very important. Every decision that I made concerning my life, concerning even setting up the business, I turned to God, and I say, for me, I feel that I'm living my purpose, because everything that I do, I never studied in finance. Today, I'm at home in finance. I swim in finance. I speak finance. I enjoy it. I encourage people in it. I advise in it. Even by supporting them in their business, I feel today I'm living my purpose. So what then would you say is my next steps? I'm still a work in progress, as I mentioned to you. But the one thing I want to do, what will success look like for me as an entrepreneur? I want to change the story of micro, small, and medium enterprises. I want to be intentional in their success. I grew up knowing Unilever. Today, at that time it was called East Africa Industries. Unilever is still there. How many homegrown companies will I want to leave when my legacy is said? That is one of my measures of success. The second thing, I want to impact the story of Africa on driving our economic growth. The reason why I chose to vie as a director in the Leasing Association of Kenya is because I wanted to influence policy and advocacy to ensure that for the kind of business I want to do, we make an impact in this country and also we look out for Africa. Then the second thing that I have also had the unfortunate experience of being in, SMEs are in a debt trap, whereby financial institutions want to leave you perpetually in debt. That makes sure that you'll never grow. So for me, all I say is I want to ensure that an SME can break the debt trap, where they're able to scale, pay off their debt, and then they can enjoy the rest of their lives in whatever dream that they envision. And for me, what I will say is my ultimate goal is not how much money that I will eventually make, is finally receiving the victor's crown after I run my race. Because today I believe I'm actually fulfilling the purpose, the design that God placed me in this world. And I want, for me, the ultimate crown will be Him telling me, well done, good and faithful servant. So today, that's what wakes me up every day, no matter how things get. And I'll be sure I'll be sharing my stories of the victories and the setbacks we get and how we navigated. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation, and I thank you for listening.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you very much. Thank you. You can now turn on your camera. We see you. Thank you, thank you. I realize that enough people are claiming also out that they are out of power. I think power has been a problem, so that this room would have been much fuller. People who've missed will get it in the YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/at Power Monday, and people will be able to get it there. Now, questions, people can put questions in the chat. I have picked a lot of things, and this very well resonates with what Live Your Dream does. One is skill. You were intentional in building your skill, and some of the selling skills, the key skills I personally love talking about, is selling skills. You are intentional in building your sales skills. Yes, that did miracles. Number two was people skills, working with people. Enough times, part of what I love saying is, when we get out of college, we can be full of dreams because we have certificates. We've graduated maybe with a first class or second class, upper division, and all these other things. And we think that the world will just kneel because we have all these knowledge, we have this certificate. But these are some of the things that are never taught within the classrooms, and we've got to learn them in order to grow. And then finance, learning to manage finance, that's very critical. You also are patient to learn from your experience, the roles you were given, and manage to set up two organizations before you set up your own. That was commendable. And then one thing we talk about is storytelling. It's good to talk about stories. Actually, part of what we teach is sales mastery, which has a lot to do with us, with that. So there is this question from Ayusa, and we were with Ayusa during the dinner for creating networks. Is some guy who is very intentional in creating networks. Uh, my name is Ayusa Ondieki from 720 Holdings, and they manufacture rods and paints. So the question is, what is one misconception SMEs have on leasing? What is one misconception MSMEs have on leasing? Yes, I'm not seeing any other question, but there are very beautiful comments, powerful, amazing presentation, Irene, very encouraging and inspired, amazing, begin with the end in mind. That's from Wycliffe. and powerful talk. In summary, we become what we attract. That's Matthew. And passionate. Thank you, Irene. Yes. So, what is one misconception? You can talk about a misconception in your own view.
Um, thank you, PP, and thank you guys for paying attention. One of the biggest misconceptions SMEs have about leasing is that it's expensive. And for me, why I find that a misconception is the fact that when you think about it, what gives you money? Is it the usage of an asset or the ownership? That's the first thing. Then the second thing, every time when you want to think of leasing as a solution, always ask yourself the productive activity that you want to do, how much money is it generating for you vis-a-vis how much you're supposed to pay? Once you count the cost, you'll be surprised that sometimes it's actually easier. It enables you to get something much better without the headache of you trying to own it. And for me, that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And that is why, for me, I became intentional in supporting SMEs, especially with leasing, because one of the limitations we feel that stops us from growing, we want to either get a loan or bite so that we can bite ourselves. But the reality is sometimes when you say, and that's why I said, money is a resource. If I need that money to buy something and I can get that resource through leasing or hiring it from someone, then by all means, don't stall your business because you can't access cash. You have an alternative.
Thank you. And I love the way you define success. Part of what I love saying is success means one, yeah, and this one I picked from John Maxwell. Know your purpose and start growing towards your purpose. You see, so the rest will follow, the rest will fit in place. Yes. So that growth and the aspect that you continue celebrating the wins, that is it. Excitement is in the journey. Now, there is also a question from there is a comment from Odhiambo. Great presentation on this cold and wet morning. I love the positivity, focus, and success on no matter what. Keep it up. There is a question from J.K. Sang. How did you overcome fear of the unknown when stepping out to start? Yes, that's a big thing. Many people go through it. And then somebody would like to know more about your organization. So part of what you will do, you'll just share your contact down there, and then they will be able to reach out to you to know more about what Lemik does and the details.
So thank you, Justice, for that. So when we talk about transitioning from corporate to entrepreneur, what are the unknowns that I would think of? One of the unknowns will be, what business do I want to do? That's the first unknown. So if you look at my presentation, one of the things, when I decided I want to be an entrepreneur 19 years ago, I wasn't very clear in terms of what business I want to do. It's only when I had done almost 10 years of experience is when the clarity was there. So the first thing, one of the ways to overcome the fear of the unknown, ask yourself as you transition, what are you good at? What do you believe you have the right networks? And what are you passionate about? For me, those were the three things that I looked at, because whatever you're good at, whatever you're passionate about, and where you have networks in, there's a high likelihood that becomes a very easy process for you to jump in. So for instance, my mother, when after she retired, she became a trader at some point. I know she ran a school at some point. Ask me to do those things, I will have probably have failed. Why? Because those are things I don't know. I am not passionate about them. I have no understanding. So that's one way to overcome the fear of the unknown. The second unknown is when you're looking at starting a business. Remember one of the things I said before you make the transition, but anyway, if you've already made the transition, you can always navigate it, is to say, what is the other unknown? Who is my customer? One of the best definitions of entrepreneurship I ever had in a summit, and this is by Strive Masiyiwa. He's the owner of Econet, and he's one of the billionaires in Africa. One of the things he said, entrepreneurship is is where you look for a solution that you want to solve for a known customer in a way that is sustainable. So if you're not able to support a customer in a sustainable manner, there's a likelihood that is not a business you're running, it's an income generating activity. So that's one of the ways in which you measure what is their known. Do you have clarity on your customer? Do you have clarity on your market? If you don't have, you may invest in research, or you may want to take a bit of time. The other one, as I mentioned to you, was the issue of finances, which is always a big one. Personal financial management. And I'm sure, Peter, you may have had a presentation here on personal financial management. Do not ever underestimate the importance of that, because when you know next month I'm not going to earn an income, there's a fear of the unknown. How will I survive? But the reality, when you know what is your basic need, like what is the minimum amount of money I need to survive, you'll be surprised that even that shilling, if you stretch it, it will take you very far. The third thing that I will mention, especially regarding money, always view money as a resource. If it's not in your pocket, guess what? Ask yourself, can I collaborate? So one of the unknowns you can have is, I don't have enough capital. Ask yourself, can I start it out by, for example, collaborating with somebody else, I earn a commission? That's a way of getting your footing in the ground. So sometimes is to see, is there another way of looking at it? One way I've learned, when you have the unknown, ask yourself 5 questions. Why? By the time you're done with the 5th, there's a likelihood you'll have gotten a path to move forward.
Well, yeah. I love it. Thank you very much. Great. Now there is also a question from Melvin, Dr. Melvin. And now you've talked about personal finance management. We've had that, and part of what is left for this year, we have about 6 or so sessions left, about 5 actually. And one of them is in money management, because we know that come January, people cry, and they are the very same people who are celebrating in December. So we are going to have that. The other thing we are going to have is something to do with organizing events that people may learn. Now you are organizing events in December or wherever, or maybe for your organization or for whichever place, family. What are some of the things you need to take into consideration? And you talked about being lifelong learner. Part of the speakers we're going to have is about lifelong learning. So those are some of the things that we have in store. You are quite much within the precincts of our focus. There is a question from Melvin. If you want to lease a piece of equipment worth 1.2, how does one engage with Lemik? And then maybe alongside that, thanks for putting your contracts. Then there is that question from Timothy. Great presentation, Irene. Do you have leasing options for industry-specific equipment that may not be available locally? Maybe you'll just give brief answers to those. Otherwise, these people can also reach out to you on the contacts given, and then you can give your closing remark, maybe a minute or so. Then we just close because we are exhausting the time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. So in a nutshell, for those who don't know what leasing is just a means through which you acquire an asset, but instead of you owning it, you pay for the use of the asset. So for Lemik, in this case, we buy the asset on your behalf. We allow you to use the asset, and you pay it back in the form of a rent. And in the programs we have, you can either choose to retain ownership at the end, or you can choose just to use the asset and return it. What happens with leasing, and that's why we find it a very good solution that can cut across all industries. Today, as Lemik, we intentionally chose to focus on equipment as opposed to motor vehicles, because we felt that's where most SMEs are lacking access to finance, and that's where there's a biggest opportunity for us to make a difference. So in terms of what sectors we are clear about, we are passionate on sectors that are looking for equipment that drive productivity. So we are passionate on ICT, we are passionate on manufacturing, we are passionate on healthcare, we are passionate in agriculture, agriculture, renewable energy, and education, because we feel there's a big need on asset investment. On the question for Melvin, we never have what you call a one-size-fits-all in leasing. When you tell us, for example, I want to lease an asset worth $1 million shillings, we must know where the asset, the specific model of asset that you require, how you intend to use it, because in leasing, three things determine the pricing. One, the cost of the asset. So today, for example, if you work with a supplier, if we feel your supplier is not giving you the best pricing, we are involved in the procurement. The second thing we look at, how do you intend to use the asset? Let me use a classic example of a laptop. A laptop used by someone in an office and a laptop used in a school, they will not have the same wear and tear. So the pricing will be different, because remember, we are pricing you for usage of the asset. The third thing we look at, if you want to return the asset to us at the end of the lease term, or you want to stay with it, the pricing will be different. Why? Because we look at then, if you return it to us, there's what we call a value that we place on that asset when it comes back, or what we expect it to come back. So we will price you less than someone who wants to retain ownership at the end. So normally what I will encourage, if anyone wants more information about our lease solutions, kindly reach out to us. I saw someone asking, a lot of the equipment that is not available locally, we are able to facilitate importation of equipment, and we also do due diligence on your overseas suppliers. So for us, we are interested in ensuring what we give you works for your business and serves you well. So maybe if someone has more questions on leasing, I've given my contacts, please reach out. I'll be happy to take you through specific scenarios for your organization. I think as I close my presentation in terms of summary, what I will encourage us is this. This is my honest opinion. Any person can be an entrepreneur. The only difference, we are not all entrepreneurs at the same time. Because when you think about it, and even going back to the Bible, God gave us the ability to create wealth. When you work in an organization, you're actually building wealth for someone else. It's not for you, and that's the reality. So one of the things I always encourage people, if you ever want to transition into to entrepreneurship, and today you're working, don't just look at capital as the only resource that you require. Try and look at the skills, try and look at the networks, because when you jump out, for sure, if you didn't build those, it will be much harder. Because one of the things I tell people, anywhere I worked, I was never Irene NIC Bank. I was Irene who works at NIC. Build your personal brand. Let customers trust that personal brand. Because when you jump out, it will not matter who you represent. And that's the experience I had when I jumped out. When I got my first contract, as I mentioned to you, I clearly told the customer, I am a startup. I have just started, but I told them I have experience in what you've asked me to do. They asked me, can you share contacts of customers who can vouch for you? I did. Today, that is my largest customer. I've had them for the last 2 years. So the reality is, build your personal brand, irrespective of who you work for. That transition becomes easier. And change your perception about money. Money is a tool. I can never overemphasize that. It is a tool. The day you realize money is a tool, that stops being a big hindrance for you to move forward. I'm in a capital-intensive business. The words one guy used when I told them what I do, he literally told me, Irene, you have balls. Well, I don't have balls. All I do is I have the grace of God, but I'm like a rolling ball that keeps on looking for ways to improve myself. So I would encourage anyone who's thinking of jumping, don't be scared. It's not as hard as it seems. And the first step of moving forward is taking that first step. And I wish anyone who wants to transition all the best. For those of you who've been much longer than me, tupatane huku kwa uwanja, we encourage each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Irene. You have quite good words, and they are just, we can sense the motivation, the passion, the energy deep within there about. Thank you very much. Now, I'd like to call someone to give a vote of thanks, and so I don't know. Odhiambo Lale, are you able to give a vote of thanks on our behalf? Odhiambo Lale. Or we go to Dr. Melvin. I hope you're there still.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
Let me just put on my camera.
Yes.
You know, there's no electricity in this place yet.
Thank you. I know people are suffering from it.
Right. So it gives me great pleasure to pass a vote of thanks. First of all, to OPP and the Power Monday team, and then our general sponsors, Live Your Dream Enterprises Limited, as well as ICT Gurus, who have facilitated this meeting today. Behind the scenes at Power Monday have been Antonia Mutunga and Lady Noel, who herself is in the South Coast without electricity. That's why she can't be here with us today. Finally, let me turn to our speaker today, who has demonstrated so passionately her purpose in life. Her purpose in life is to make life for us as MSMEs and corporates that much simpler by giving us access to assets which we would otherwise not have been able to acquire on our own, or which are too expensive to acquire on our own. So this is an alternative solution to giving you the tools that you need to either manufacture like Lucy, or to create value in the marketplace. So thank you so much, Irene Karuga. You have brought so many skills to us in a very short period of time by describing your own trajectory in the marketplace. We have many lessons to learn. We have learned many lessons from you, and we hope that the audience are going to practice what you have taught us. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you once again on this particular Power Monday. And with those few remarks, let me hand you over to our illustrious chair of the board of Power Monday, one Otieno Paul Peter. Back to you, Otieno.
Thank you very much, Dr. Melvin. Thank you. Thank you. So in conclusion, we just want to maybe make a few announcements. One is Power Monday, as we will be meeting up to Monday, the 16th of December. That is about 5 more sessions left, and then we break for December holidays and resume on the first Monday of the year, which will be 6th of January. And we have lots of topics lined up for you. Number two, we have a Power Monday WhatsApp group. I've put a link there through which we continue to interact, to share. Every Wednesday, we share about our businesses. You can share your flyers, you can share your story, and you continue to grow. And our Power Monday also has a YouTube channel for people who've come late. You can always pick this up by Wednesday. We always upload them by Wednesday of that same week. So like this one will be there uploaded, and the channel is youtube.com/@powermonday. I'd put that too. The other thing is, we are as Power Monday group or community, we always have a few things that we do per year. We have 3 meet and greets. The previous one was a dinner, which happened on the 25th of October. But then we also are trying to ensure that we also share our blessings with other people who are less fortunate in the community. We have identified an organization, a children's home, which we do visit, and it's one in Kawangware, in Nairobi. It's called Precious Blood Children's Family. I think so, yes. So Irene, I hope you know it. It's next to your school. It's actually within your school, alma mater. So we visit them, and we are going to visit on 7th. That will be the second visit for this year, to share with them Christmas. Yes, as you are breaking for your Christmas, you can also divide something. We intend to have people to deliver to them maybe some bags of rice, beans, whatever, unga. So if you can kindly contribute towards that, I have put a pay bill there. It's 247247, and account number is 439331, the very same account number we were using for dinner and all the meet and greets. Otherwise, the next meet and greet after this will be the last Saturday of March, the last Saturday of July, and finally our dinner will be on the 31st of October 2025, which will be the last Friday of 2025. I've already given you a program. If you miss, don't say, oh, this one came too abruptly. Next time. So I've given you next time. It will be the meet and greets are usually in the afternoon, but dinner is in the evening. The other thing is this coming charity visit will be on 7th of December, and it's going to be on a Saturday between 3 and 5 p.m. So we are all welcome to join, and it will be good to interact, meet, network, and share stories, share ideas, and connect to each other. Otherwise, thank you all. I want to wish you the very best in your week.